What's good? It's like, I'm doing a solo show. All right, let's go. I was very confused. All right, what's good, everybody out there in IB Nation? Welcome to another edition of the Irish Breakdown Podcast, Sunday night edition. And this is kind of a primer because I'll say this: more often than not, we do our Upon Further review on Sunday nights. It'll be at 7:00, and that'll be our plan. There'll be I believe I counted 3 that will push to Monday because of traveling from an away game and things like that. So only 3 really are going to be effective. It's going to be A&M, it's going to be Atlanta, and it's going to be LA. Those are the 3 that are going to be effective. We'll push that to Monday at 7, but the rest will all be Sunday at 7:00.
Going to be a little different format this year, but you're going to have to wait till next Monday to find out what that is.
That's right. But we wanted to kind of scratch everybody's itch a little bit on the Sunday night show, and we decided to insert a little bold prediction action. So looking forward to this one. We kind of had some fun with this one, Brian. And remember, we need to remember what a bold prediction is. That's the best way to put it, right? A bold prediction means it's out there. It's out there. It's not we're saying this is going to happen.
I had some guy get mad at me a couple years ago because I predicted that Tyler Buckner would have 4,000 yards of offense. And he's like, well, you're this. I'm like, it was a bold prediction.
The whole
meant
point,
to be
man.
Fun.
Yeah.
But they're fun, but they're also things we think are possible. They're just not normal. So it's like, okay, predicting that Notre Dame is going to make the college football playoff is not a bold prediction.
Right.
Predicting Riley Leonard's going to pass for 3,000 yards is not really a bold prediction. So we had to have some fun with it, and but again, it's fun. The odds of if all of our bold predictions come true, this is going to be like the greatest season in the history of college football.
Right.
That's again the kind of the point. But each one individually is something that we do in fact believe could come true. Like it's realistic, but it's going to take a really good season for it to happen. And that's meant to be the point of it. And it could be a negative thing. It could be something really, really like, hey, this is not going to go how you think it's going to go. But I got to say, Vince, before we get into our bold predictions, this is probably the hardest one I've ever done.
Yeah.
Because like all the bold predictions I'm kind of coming up with, I'm like, no, that's not bold enough, because I think that's kind of what a lot of people might be expecting.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So it's like, or, hey, this has been done before, and so last season kind of messed up some things, you know what I mean? So just saying, hey, Notre Dame's going to, set a scoring record. Well, I kind of did that last year, right? So let's try to think of some other things to go with. So I had some fun with it. I know you had some fun with it. Took a while to get put together, man, but we're going to have some fun. We're going to do offensive team,
right?
Then unit, like different unit things. And then we'll go personnel, specific personnel. Then we'll do defensive team, defensive personnel. And then we're going to do a kind of a final big picture team one, and then throw a couple college football things in there and have some fun with that. So, it's gonna be fun, Vince, and I had fun with this, and like you said, this is sort of our getting people ready for the Sunday night shows and what we're going to be doing for our Sunday night shows.
Yeah, and I don't know. I'm going to get your perspective on this, Brian. Everybody's saying it's game week. I know a lot of people start their week on Sunday. I'm more of a Monday guy personally, so to me, game week is Monday because we do the Upon Further review, which is looking back at the game on Saturday. So I'm not ready to call it game week yet, although we're splitting hairs here. That's my personal opinion.
As a coach, Sunday night started game week because we do our breakdowns and our grades, and then we'd bring the players and meet with them, go over the game that we just had. Then we as a staff that night would get together and start breaking down the next game. But you really don't get into game week till you get up on Monday morning for us.
Yeah. Right.
So when you wake up on Monday, it's game week, because we got to put a bow on the game that just got played. And so that's also going to be true here. So this is sort of our last sort of big picture fun look at the team until, starting this week, it's going to be looking at Notre Dame and who they are and what, what kind of team that they're going to be.
In theory, we get a depth chart tomorrow. So that will, I'm sure, get everybody fired up and excited.
Yeah, I like you said that in theory. We'll
in
see.
theory. I said theory. You never know. But anyway, Let's kick this thing off, Brian. So we're, like you said, we're gonna go offense first, then we're gonna go defense, then we're gonna go team as a whole. So bold predictions for offense. We're gonna start for the unit. We're gonna do, offensive bold predictions for the entire offense. We each have, 3 or 4, give or take, and then we will transition into bold predictions for individual players offensively and what that looks like. Okay, and then yes, we are going to completely ignore special teams because that's what we do here at Irish Breakdown. So I just want to throw that out there for anybody that's looking for special teams. I'm joking. No, but we're sticking.
We did have someone comment like they wish we'd talk about special teams more, and I'm like, look,
we talk about it a lot.
Special teams is important, but it's just not something that necessarily drives people to watch our shows and read our content. So.
We will talk plenty of special teams. Don't worry. I was being funny. I was joking just because of my love of special teams because of who lives in my house. But anyway, bottom line.
What was the one clip of your son that you put out this past weekend's game? It wasn't him doing anything special teams related.
Nope.
It was him throwing a football.
He was lined up as a kicker.
And I was like, exactly my point. Exactly my point.
The best part about that, Brian, I don't want to get off tangent too much, but the best part about that play, obviously it was awesome. The outcome was awesome. It was the first time they got brand new lights this year. The LEDs that flash and whatever. That was literally, they had scored 34 points up to that point, had never done the light show. And the athletic director comes up to me after we scored the touchdown, and he says to me, hey, after he kicks this extra point, we're going to fire up the light show, so he better not miss. 10 seconds later, the ball is skirting across the ground because of a bad snap. I'm like, oh, my God, here we go. And then he throws the score. He's excited. Then the lights start going off. I've never seen my kid more excited. I mean, he goes over to the student section. He's getting them all fired up. Like it was a lot of fun. But anyway, so that was the first light show ever at the high school was because of what he did on that play. So that was pretty cool. No one will ever remember that, 20 years from now, but I always will.
No one will ever remember that. You will never forget that.
No, I will never
forget that.
No,
no doubt.
It was unbelievable. So anyway, back to Notre Dame. Bold prediction time. Let's talk offensive unit. Brian, how about you go, I go, we'll snake it, and then we'll flip it up every time we roll. So why don't you hit us with the first one?
So I went a little bit more nitty gritty on some things as opposed to like scoring and things like that, since we kind of saw that last year. And then honestly, I don't know that the offense is going to necessarily set a scoring record again this year, because I do think the schedule is challenging in the way things are going to go. And also for a point of reference, we're doing 12+1 in our team records, because like otherwise there's going to be a ton of records that are going to get set this year if Notre Dame goes beyond the first round of the playoff and they play a 14th or a 15th game. It's like, okay, yeah, you broke this record, that record, because you played 3 more games. You know what I mean? So I just want to, when we talk about a total prediction, it's always going to include the 12+1 situation. So it'll get past the first round. So just want to make sure that we're clear on that.
Yep.
My first one, Vince, is Notre Dame is going to set a sort of I don't want to say modern, but Notre Dame is going to have its best yards per game average since 2005. In 2005, that was under Brady Quinn. Notre Dame went for 477.3 yards per game. So it's basically what I'm saying is they're going to have the most yards per game since I've been born. The 2 highest of what they call the modern era, which is 1993 post, according to Notre Dame. They had 504 in 1968 and 510.5 in 1970. I don't have Notre Dame getting to 500, but I mean they could, but it's more about focusing on that record. So since I've been born, 1978, Notre Dame is going to have their highest yards per game average, which was previously set by Brady Quinn's team in 2005 of 477.3. The closest they've come to that here since that time was in 2015, Mike Denbrock's last year as the offensive coordinator at Notre Dame. They went for 466.4 yards per game. So I did think that was kind of interesting that one of Denbrock's teams has been the highest since Brady Quinn set his record. So that's my number one, Vince, is they're going to have the highest yards per game average since the year I was born in 1978.
Man, okay, that's a good one. I like that one. That means a lot of offense is what that means. Big plays, and it's going to be kind of a staple in the Mike Denbrock offense, which I do appreciate very much. And I know that is what Mike Denbrock is attempting to accomplish as well. So that fits the narrative, as they say. My first one is kind of a similar one to what we've kind of done in the past. And I don't know how bold this is, but they averaged a little over 39 yards, or excuse me, 39 points per game last year and set the record for points in a game. And I'm saying that they are going to score 40 plus. So that's only one more point a game, but it breaks the record again. So I feel like it's bold because it's breaking the record.
And it's doing something they've never done before.
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
exactly.
I think the only time Notre Dame has ever scored more than 40 points in a game was like 1912.
Right. Right.
And they only played like 8 or 9 games or something like that. And like that, so it's a little bit of a different, actually, I'm going to go look that team up, Vince, because I believe they had like a 100-point game.
Oh, gosh.
That year.
That helps.
They scored 116 against St. Viator. They scored 74 against Adrian. I coached against Adrian, by the way.
Yeah.
And they scored 69 against Marquette, 47 against St. Louis, 41 against Wabash, 39 against Morris Harvey. They played like one team that we would consider like a real team. That was Pitt, and they beat them 3-0. Pitt went 3-6 that year. So we're talking like truly modern football.
Yeah.
Where they weren't playing high school teams and stuff like that. So
and there are high school teams on their schedule.
There are nursing schools on the schedule. There are like flight schools on the schedule. It's pretty wild.
Hilarious. Yeah, hilarious. So that's my first bold prediction. They're going to break the modern scoring record at Notre Dame. They're going to score 40 or more points throughout the season on average. So that's my first one, Brian.
You ready for my number 2?
I'm always ready. Okay. What do you got?
My number 2, Notre Dame will set an all-time record, modern record, in yards per play. In the current record was set, and it's kind of a sort of a theme here, Vince, but the record was set in 2015 by Mike Denbrock's last offense. The second best mark, and this is since 1967. That's when Notre Dame keeps it in their statistics. The second best mark was last season, so this is kind of like the one you had for scoring.
Gotcha.
It's not like a huge thing, but I do think we're going to see a jump. I do believe Notre Dame is going to break the single season record for yards per play in modern football, which was set in 2015, 7.017. So it rounded up to 7.02. I believe Notre Dame is going to be at least a 7.1 this season.
Okay.
Which would make them one of the 5 best in this country. So like my yards per game average that I went with of 477.3 would make them a top 10 offense based on last year. And what did I say? Did I say 7.1 or 7.2?
2.
7.2 would put him 5th in college football last year. It's behind LSU, Oregon, USC, and Georgia.
Yeah, it would be more than 7.2 because I think 7.2 is the record from last year. I think is what you said.
No, 7.02.
Is
the record. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, that's
and then
right.
Last year was 6.95, which rounded up to 7.
Gotcha. Okay. Gotcha.
Yep.
Gotcha. Very good. So another very positive offensive stat. Mine is you could say this one is individual, but it's a combo. And I don't have names attached to it. So that's why I put it into the unit category. I think Notre Dame is going to have I'm going to make sure I say it right here. Okay. I think Notre Dame is going to have a 1,000-yard rusher and a 1,000-yard receiver. And I know that's a bunch. And that's why it's bold. Because if I was putting money on it or something crazy like that, or actually making a prediction, I do think that the ball is going to be spread around enough that maybe a receiver does not get to 1,000 yards. And I could definitely see that being the case. And that may actually be better for the offense.
We have both said that's more likely, Vince.
Yes, absolutely.
Which then by definition makes this a bold prediction.
Bingo. And that's why I said it, because I am predicting that won't happen. That's why it is a bold prediction. I think Notre Dame does get to a 1,000-yard rusher. I think that does happen. But the 1,000-yard receiver is going to be a lot more difficult. But I still wouldn't be overly shocked. I would be a little nervous as to the direction of the offense, honestly, if it happened. I want to see the ball spread around a little bit more. I think that's better for the offense. But I could see a Chris Mitchell. I could see a Jaden Greathouse. I could see them having over 1,000 yards. It is possible. They have the talent. There's no doubt about that. but there's so much talent, in my opinion, in the wide receiver room that I don't think it's going to happen. And so therefore it lies into the bold prediction category. So 1,000-yard rusher, 1,000-yard receiver. That's my bold prediction.
I've been thinking a lot about this, Vince, and I'm starting to come around to the notion that it might actually be less surprising to see a 1,000-yard receiver than a 1,000-yard rusher.
Ooh, okay.
Just because I think there is going to be such a blend between the two backs and Riley Leonard running the football, and just some of my concerns about the O-line,
sure,
and then just feeling like somebody at receiver is going to break out. But that's more, I think, more of the, as we get close to the season, you start overthinking things.
Oh yeah,
more than anything else. I think that's 100%. Probably more that was what that.
I get it. This is where we need football. Like I need to see some empirical evidence of something. Like I need to see something because you're right. We're looking at everything on paper. We're using, Mike Denbrock at LSU. We're using Mike Denbrock at Notre Dame. We're using, Chris Mitchell at his former school, Bo Collins at his former school. Like there's a lot of ifs and there's a lot of questions and there's a lot of like, we've done the research, we've done the sweat equity is there, but it's like, I'd like to see everybody in a gold helmet wearing green and blue and gold. And let's see what happens when they're all working together and all of those different things. So yeah, we need football right now. And luckily 6 days from now, we will not have that excuse and we will be dissecting a game. So, okay, you're up.
Yes, I am up. My next prediction, Vince, is going to be. I want to push back on something that somebody just said in the chat. By the way,
okay.
Somebody just said that 2013 Florida State had 3 1,000-yard receivers and a 1,000-yard rusher. Just saying. I want to push back on that a little bit on a couple things about that. Number one, that's not accurate. They had 2,000-yard receivers and Rashad Green and Kelvin Benjamin. And as we talked about, our statistics go to, and they had 1,000-yard rusher in Devontae Freeman. But I want to point out again that our projection is for 13 games. Kelvin Benjamin in 2013 had his 1,011 yards in 14 games. He had 54 yards in the 14th game. So he didn't go over until the 14th game. And Devontae Freeman, their 1,000-yard running back, ran for 73 yards in their 14th game. He only rushed for 1,016. So in this time frame that we're discussing, they only had 1,000-yard receiver and 0,000-yard rusher. So again, the context of what we're talking about is 12 plus 1, not playing past that. Because if you were to tell me, okay, they're going to be a semifinal team, then I'm like, yeah, I would hope that they would have 1,000-yard rusher and at least 1,000-yard receiver.
Got an extra few games to do it. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. It's like rushing for 1,000 yards back when Jim Brown played was a lot more impressive than rushing for 1,000 yards once they went to 16 games, and certainly now that they play 17 games.
Right.
So just want to make sure that there's some context to what we're talking about there for that one. So my third one, Vince.
Yes.
Notre Dame is going to set a school record, again, modern record. So that's 1939, since 1939, in yards per pass attempt. That record was set in 1964.
Wow.
And that record was 9.5. And I believe Notre Dame is going to go slightly above, like it could be 0.5, 0.9, 0.5, something, but it's still going to be higher than that team. Do you remember who the quarterback was on that team, Vince? It was John. I forget.
Hewart?
Yes. He was the quarterback. Now, he was over 10, but they had their backup quarterback threw 16 passes and was a 2.0. So it brought the overall average down. And interestingly, Notre Dame's offense last year, as bad as it was, had the third best mark since 1939 at 9.1. I think they go over this year. I think they go well above that. And I do think that's a bit of a bold prediction. And so, yes.
Well, you're setting a record that's been there since the 60s. I mean, that qualifies as a bold prediction, I would say. Yep. So I think you're right there within the boldness of your prediction. I like it. My next one, and I texted you about this, and I went back and I looked at last year's, the issue that we've had with the offense. So we're talking about Notre Dame setting records that were kind of set last year, right? And there were good things that happened last year. But everybody will rightfully say they didn't show up in the big games offensively. And that is true. There's no doubt about it. And so I went back and I decided, which were the big games last year. I did include Duke because that ended up being a big game where they really didn't score enough points, to be perfectly honest with you. It was a highly ranked Duke team at the time. And, they put that touchdown across at the very last minute to get them where they needed to go. And so the offense was not good against Duke, right? And so went back. There were 5 big games, in my opinion. Added up the scores, divided them by 5. It ended up being like 25 point something. Now, the 48 points Notre Dame.
Real quick, Vince, which games did you count?
I'm trying to remember. It was.
Did you do NC State?
I did not. I did
okay, so you
Duke,
did
Louisville,
Ohio State,
Duke,
Louisville, and who else?
USC.
Okay,
and
Clemson.
Yeah, those are the 5. Yep. Those are the 5. So it was like 25.2, I think is what it averaged out to. Now, of course, I was like, that 48 points that Notre Dame put on USC kind of like, ruins the average in a bad way, right? For what I'm trying to accomplish with my bold prediction. But as you aptly said, there were defensive touchdowns in there, and there were also turnovers that happened and put Notre Dame in a good spot.
There was a kick return for a touchdown. Yeah. There was a fumble return for a touchdown. So Notre Dame's offense only scored 34 points in that game, which would actually drag that 5-game average down to 22.6.
Very good.
If you talk about what just the offense scored, because
right.
We're doing an offensive production. So just a little help for you there.
No, I appreciate it. And so they didn't score enough in the big games. I think we can all agree on that, right? And so my bold prediction, and I'm not even sure if it's super bold, but it needs to happen if Notre Dame is going to win the games that they need to win, right? I said that they're going to score 28 or more points in the big games this year, right? So the offense is going to show up when it matters. I wanted to up that to maybe like 30 or something like that, but 28 will do the job, in my opinion, with the defense that Notre Dame has. So I'm okay with keeping it at 28. That's still a significant increase as to where it was. And so 28 plus is my bold prediction offensively for in big games.
So you're saying minimum 28 per average. And do you have any kind of have you thought through this enough? And this could just be, if you haven't, no,
you're
problem.
good.
Like, is there any kind of, they'll score at least X amount in each of those games?
I haven't thought specifically about each game.
Because I'm wondering, do they score 50 in one game and then 10 in another, and then
That's
they score
fair.
30?
I think when I think of an average in my own peanut brain, when I think of an average, I think of they all need to be 28 or more. That's how I think of it. 28 points in a game, in each of those games needs to happen. Yes, I understand what the word average means. I get it, that there could be 50 and 10. I get that. But in my brain, that means we're talking basement of 28 points in those games to be where they need to be. So.
I dig that.
So maybe average isn't even the right word. You know what I mean? It's hey, Notre Dame's going to score at least 28 points in all big games.
Now that's a bold prediction.
That's what I want to be.
That's even more bold, Vince, than the other one, because like I said, you could score 50 in one and 10 in the other, and then
that would not cut it for me.
If they score at least 28 points in each of those games, this team's going to be hard to beat. That's a good one. That's a good one. This last one, we kind of are doing the same thing, and I made mine kind of in kind of response to yours.
Okay.
So do you want to go first with yours? Because mine's I only had 3. Mine was kind of just having some fun at what Vince's final bold prediction.
Yeah. So I am gonna. Do I keep it at that number, Brian, or do I drop it by 1? That's the question.
Drop it by 1.
That's what I figured too. Okay. That was exactly what I was thinking. All right. Notre Dame offense. All right. There will be at least 3 different offensive line starting lineups this year in those first 13 games. There'll be 3 different starting lineups. Now, that could be that, and what that means is there will be a different 5 in a different position at least 3 times. So that could be somebody moves from one position to another. That could be somebody gets replaced. That could be a million different scenarios. There's 5 different positions. I'm saying that at least 3 times there will be a different lineup from the offensive line this season. So it depends on how you look at it, Brian. This could be looked at as a positive. meaning, guys have beaten other guys out, and they have earned that spot. This could be a negative in that there's injuries. This could, there's some
guys aren't playing well.
It could be coaching malpractice. Like there's a million different ways this could go, but I'm just saying
they had 3 last year. But I think for context of knowing Vince's postseason predictions, last year, you and I would probably agree they really only had 2.
Yes.
Because the third one was a bowl game that people opted out.
Sitting out. Yeah.
They won't. You're talking like normal. They're playing a playoff game. No one's opting out. This
Correct.
is just a more of a true type of thing. So I get that one.
So 3. Can only imagine what the chat is saying right now. I've got it turned off, but I'm saying 3 different offensive line starting lineups.
Mine was Notre Dame will start the same offensive line all season.
Going the opposite with me.
Yeah, it's just having some fun with it. Yeah, just having some fun with it.
Yeah, it's going to be. Look, the offensive line is a huge question mark right now, right? And I think we all have different thoughts about even what it's going to look like on the depth chart when it comes out, if it comes out this week, and what it's going to look like. Who's even going to be the second team offensive line? Like, there are so many questions right now with the offensive line from an experience standpoint, from just all of it. There's so many differences, so many things going on that we just don't know. We just don't know what's going on. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see what is up with this offensive line throughout the whole season. So I am nervous / excited to see what's going on with this offensive line. That's for sure. Let's move on to our next segment, which is the individual offensive player predictions, our bold predictions from an offensive standpoint. And we're doing individual players. And I'm going to go first because we're snaking around here. I'm going to go first. And I mean, how can I not make my first bold prediction about Riley Leonard? Because he's going to be the ultimate stat guy, and that's where I'm at. If Notre Dame is going to be who we think Notre Dame is going to be, Riley Leonard is going to have to put up some stats. And I'm not even sure how bold this is. I already upped it from my original number, but I have that Riley Leonard will surpass, which means more than 3,800 yards of total offense. So throwing, running, he's going to be over 3,800 yards of total offense. So here we go. The season rests on the broad shoulders of Riley Leonard, which, by the way, in person are very broad. He's a big boy. 3,800 plus yards. That's where I'm at.
Vince, I went with Riley Leonard on my first one as well. I have Riley Leonard. I went a little different this one. I was going to do something statistically, but who knows how things are going to go statistically. I have this. Riley Leonard will be a Heisman finalist. He'll be in New York. He'll be Notre Dame's first player in New York since 2012 when Manti was there. So that's where I'm going. That's where I'm going on that one.
Love that. That's fantastic. That's in line with what I'm like.
Yep.
If Riley Leonard has over 3,800 yards, he's probably going to get an invite, I would think.
Yeah.
Notre Dame's going to be pretty successful at that point. So
yeah, I think so.
I like that. My next one is, I didn't attach a specific wide receiver to this, but I said a Notre Dame wide receiver will catch 10 touchdown passes.
Is this a receiver?
A receiver.
Not any pass catcher. So not a tight end, wide receiver. Okay.
Specifically wide receiver. Specifically a wide receiver. Because, look, we all know what the tight ends have done at Notre Dame. And look, I love Mitchell Evans. I love, Raritan. I love all those guys. But I'm saying this is going to be a wide receiver renaissance this year. And Riley Leonard's got to throw him to somebody. And I think he's going to spread it around, obviously. But I think a wide receiver has a chance to get into double digits when it comes to touchdown reception.
Do you want to kind of go out on a limb and pick who you think that will be? Because I know who mine is.
Yeah.
If your prediction comes true, I know who mine is. But I want it, since it's your prediction, I want to give you. Oh, is it number?
That's where I'm going. I have a lot of faith.
I thought you're like, don't take my answer. Hold on a second.
Well, that too.
Don't take my answer. Yeah.
I just think number one, I think Jaden Greathouse is poised to have a breakout season.
Touchdown machine, dude. I mean, even last year, I mean, he had 4 in the first 5 games or something like that. Like, guy knows how to get in the end zone. Like, I think he only caught 100%. 1 pass against NC State, and it was a touchdown. I think he only caught 3 passes against Navy, and 2 of them were touchdowns. Like, the kid just knows how to score. And of course, in high school, that's all he did was he thought 3 passes. The first 3 games of the year, he caught 8 passes. 3 of them went for touchdowns.
Right. Yeah. I feel very good. If somebody's going to do it, it'll be him.
Yeah.
So, all right. What do you got?
My second one is I had to kind of amp this up a little bit in order for it to be bold, since it's something we kind of saw 2 years ago. But I have Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price will both go for over 1,000 yards of offense, not rushing, offense. So rushing and receiving. In order to up the ante a little bit, Vince, I said one of them will have at least 1,200 yards. If I had to bet, it would be Love, because I think he's going to get a lot of receiving options out of the backfield. But I think they're both going to go for over 1,000 yards of offense this season.
Okay.
Now, the reason I had to up it a little bit is because this happened 2 years ago. I mean, Logan Diggs and Audric Estime both went for over 1,000 yards of offense. If you put all yards in there, they actually had 3 guys over 1,000 yards, I believe, in 2022. Chris Tyree had 422 rushing yards in 2022, 444 rushing yards in 2022. He had 138 receiving yards, and then he had actually, no, he didn't go over. I thought he did go over 1,000 yards, but no, he didn't. He went over 1,000. He was at 8. He was at 836. So I thought he was over 1,000, but that's my bad. He was not, but they were close. But I'm going 2 running backs. Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price will both be over 1,000 yards of offense. One of them will be over 1,200 yards this season in a 12+1 circumstance. So
beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Love it. Love it. Love it. My final individual offensive player prediction, and it's a combination of 2 running backs, or actually all of them. That's fine. I said that the running back room will account for more than 5 receiving touchdowns. Now, I'm not sure how bold that is.
How many?
I said 5. It seemed like a lot, but then as I'm reading it out loud, I don't know that it is as many as I think that it is. I think the running backs are going to be involved in the pass game. I was thinking about the top 2 guys, specifically on this one, but I could go with running back room, and that's fine.
Well, running back room in general is not, to your point, is not necessarily overly bold, because they had 5 last year and 5 the year before.
No, there you go. Okay.
So if you want to say just those 2 combined,
I'll up the running back room. I will say over 8.
Yeah, okay. And now that's a little bit more bold. What would have been bold if you'd have said Jeremiah Love's going to have 5 receivers?
Yes, that would have been bold.
That I could have gone with.
That would have absolutely been bold. So I'll say running back room 8.
Here's my last one, and this is probably the most bold pick I'm going to make all day.
Okay.
Seriously. Of the player and team unit ones, not the team ones, because I went real crazy with the team stuff. But Notre Dame will have an All-American offensive lineman this year. First or second team All-American this year on the offensive line. And I know it's a position a lot of people are concerned about. If I had to make my prediction, it would be Billy Schrouth. But I'm predicting that Notre Dame will have an All-American offensive lineman this year. Now, again, that's kind of against the grain of the sentiment of the offensive line is going to be a struggle and a problem and all this other kind of stuff. But, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
I love that, though. I
wanted to do something on Jaden Greathouse. I wanted to do something on Chris Mitchell, and I wanted to be like Chris Mitchell's going to average over 20 yards a catch and on over 40 catches, and be the first guy since Will Fuller in 15 that had at least 40 catches and averaged 20. I thought about that one, but I was like, I want to do Jaden Greathouse. I actually thought about the 10 touchdown receptions for that one, for Jaden Greathouse, but I didn't have the guts to do it like you did.
Well.
So I went with Riley Leonard will be a Heisman finalist. Love and Price will both go over 1,000 yards of offense, and Billy Schrouth will be an All-American. Or an offensive lineman will be an All-American, and my prediction is that my top prediction will be Billy Schrouth. Okay. But it's it can be anybody. The broader prediction is someone will be a first or second team All-American. And I don't mean on some obscure All-American team. I mean kind of like Howard Cross was last year, where he was a second teamer on like 3 of the big ones.
Right.
So somebody that was kind of my, and I don't mean freshman All-American, I mean All-American, the big dog list.
The big right.
That's where I'm at on that one.
Yeah, we'll get to some freshman All-American stuff later. But in the meantime, that is our predictions for offense, our bold predictions for offense. We're going to take a slight break, and then we'll be back. But we're going to take a slight break, so don't go anywhere. But we're just going to give you an opportunity, to go freshen up, grab a drink.
Nope. No, that's not why I wanted to take a break in between. And it's not your fault, Vince. I didn't tell you. I needed to bring this up before we start our next segment. Trevor Rocket, a longtime member of Irish Breakdown, his wife has been battling an illness for some time, and Trevor has let us know that his wife has passed away.
Oh man!
And so, Trevor, I am so incredibly heartbroken for you, man, and we're praying for you, and I'm thankful that we are a place you felt the need to go to and turn to in support of this. But we're your Notre Dame family, and we're here to pray for you and be there with you and help you take your mind off of things as best we can. But I love the fact, and I know you and I have emailed a few times, and I'm so thankful that your faith in God has been strengthened through this and not weakened, because a lot of people, it can be weakened at times like this. But I praise God that yours has been solidified and strengthened through a time that I just honestly couldn't imagine what you're going through, my friend. But we love you, and we're praying for you, and just felt like Lindsay deserved something more than just bringing it up at the end of the show. So I just wanted to.
Gotcha.
Vince has his chat off during the show. He didn't see it.
No.
And I just texted him that, hey, we needed to just take a little pause in between. That's my fault. I should have been more clear.
Gotcha. No, that makes sense.
Apologize.
I thought we needed to step away. So
no.
Gotcha.
No, that's my fault. But Trevor, we love you, man. We're praying for you. And
yes, 100%.
Trevor and Lindsay, he emailed me, and I'll share this with y'all. I think Trevor will be okay with it. But like, they would actually watch listen to Irish Breakdown in the hospital room together. So, yeah, we love you, man. I'm sorry for your loss, buddy.
Yeah, for sure. Can't even imagine. I'm glad we could at least be there with you. I mean, strength in numbers as much as we possibly can, and know that we care big time, because we do. Yeah, we do. And now we have to talk football again. Like, just doesn't seem. But hey, we'll do it for you, man. Like, we'll keep the norm going, and we'll do what we do, and because it helps. And believe me, when my dad passed, like, this was the IB Nation, and this show and everybody around was my cathartic moment. You know what I mean? And it helps you get through stuff. It's not easy. So we'll be thinking about you, man, for sure. 100%. To the easiest segue ever, let's talk about defensive football, Bryan. And we're going to continue with our bold predictions. And we are going to start with the team. And we are going to do some defensive bold predictions for the team. And then we'll narrow it down to some defensive bold predictions for some individual players as well. So,
Vince, did you find this one even harder?
Yeah, because the defense is freaking good.
Yeah, so
they're elite.
Here's an example of why I found this one so hard. So I'm going through I'm going through like the statistics. So like the all-time records, and Notre Dame sent this thing out, which was awesome. And because I'm still got like the 2018 version is the last time they sent one out, and like trying to add recent seasons into it and stuff like that. And so I'm going through it. I'm like, all right, let's find out where Notre Dame's defense is ranked, and I'm going through it. And I'm like, good Lord, like they finished like in the top 5 of like a bunch of different things last year. And like looking at their pass defense and their yards per play, I'm actually going to pull some of this stuff up. It was actually kind of funny going through this and being like, okay, I don't really know where to go with this one, because they're so good in so many different categories. But so like, let's get past the opponent single game and get to the defensive one. Let's see here. Where's the Notre Dame defensive one? Give me a second. Trying to find the defensive records here. I think are they before the offensive records? It wasn't exactly the most Like,
no, user friendly, I guess is the best way
yeah,
to
it's
put
like
it.
it's
Yeah.
really mixed up a lot. But like pass defense, I think this is like the second or third best pass defense they've had since like 1950, and there's just all these different statistics that I'm going through, and I'm like I don't know how I'm gonna find a statistic to kind of go with on this one,
Right.
because there's so many areas where last year the Notre Dame defense was so good that it just was kind of like, okay, I don't really know what I'm supposed to
I
do with
know.
this one, right? I mean, so you're looking at, oh, here we go. It's opponent single season lows, which or just best defensive performances, but whatever. Uh, but like looking at some of these, it's like, okay, last year Notre Dame set a record fewest yards, passing yards per attempt since 1990. The defense was like fifth and lowest passing completion since 1990. Fewest passing yards per game was the second lowest since 1990. And I'm going through all these records, and I'm like, good Lord, do you guys have any records you didn't like finish in the top 2 or 3 for last year that we can kind of find something? So I eventually settled in on some things, Vince, but like, and then some of the records are just like nuts. Like, okay, lowest yards allowed per game since 1960 is like 187.6 was the 1966 team. And thank goodness Notre Dame has another category like since 1990, because offenses were just so much different back then. And so I finally found a couple that I was able to settle in on, man. But it was a challenge finding some team ones on defense that weren't just like kind of lame, because it was hard to kind of find some stuff
Right.
for that. So, I'm sorry, I'm trying to take that down. It wouldn't come down. Sorry about that. So yeah, that was a challenge. That one was definitely a challenge. So what was the first one that you did come up with, Vince?
So the first one I had was that the defense is going to give up less than 15 points per game. Now, here's the thing. Less than 15 points a game will put them, in most years, in the top 3, top 5 defense in the country, which I think is absolutely apropos. They were at 15 point something last year. So, I mean, they're in the neighborhood of that 15 points a game. So I don't know how bold it is, but that would, like I said, that would make them a top 3 to 5 defense in the country from a scoring defensive standpoint. And so if you're less than 15, so 14 point or 13 point or whatever, if you're less than 15, that means you're an elite defense. And I think that's where this defense belongs. And so I'm not exactly sure how bold it is, but it would still, I believe, that's better than what Notre Dame has done in a very long time.
Yeah,
So
I think you'd have to go back to 2012, Vince.
Okay.
Since Notre Dame was below 15 points per game. I mean, so
Right.
and again, they didn't play a lot of great offenses back then, and the one really good offense they played hung 42 on them in the BCS game.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
But
Right.
to your point, I mean, that 12.8, you're talking about one of the best defenses of the last 50 years for Notre Dame.
Right.
And as good as some of the defense they had before, Clark Lee's last defense Marcus Freeman's defense gave up 19.7. Clark Lee's last defense gave up 19.7. He gave up 17.9. The 2018, the playoff team gave up 18.2. 2017, Elko's defense gave up 21.5. We'll skip the Bryan Van Gorder error, pretend it never happened. In 2012, they gave up 12.8. And so, yeah, I mean, that's a pretty good. Being below 15, especially in today's era, would be really, really good. And below 15 last year would have ranked them, because Notre Dame at 15.9 was at 7th last year. If they're below 15, they'll be in the top 5, and they would have been the highest ranked non-Big Ten team in the country.
Yeah.
And there's a reason that the top 4 scoring defenses last year were Big Ten teams, because that league is full of offenses that suck.
Yeah, exactly. They just weren't scoring points, period, and they probably had Iowa on the schedule. So,
yes,
that is what it is. So, What is your first team defensive bold prediction?
So I had some issues with this one, Vince. You went scoring. I'm going to go total. I said Notre Dame will have their best yards per game average allowed since 1990.
Okay.
I don't know necessarily how bold this is, because last year they were kind of close to that, but it's hard to kind of build on that success year after year, and I'm gonna predict that they do. The record was 270.0, set in 1996. That's the record since 1990.
Okay.
Last year's defense was 276.3, so it was the second best defense. For context, the 2012 offense or defense that was as good as it was finished 5th at 305.5.
Yep.
The really good 0-2 defense, remember Ty Willingham's first year, was at 300.
Mm-hmm.
So last year's defense was way better than that.
Yes.
The last time they did this was Lou Holtz's last year. It was 270. And my prediction is they're going to go below that. They're going to hold opponents to less than 270 yards per game this season.
So yours was actually even more bold than mine because I had one very similar. So I'll just say it now because it's technically the third one I wrote down. I said the Irish hold opponents under 300 total yards of offense per game for only the second time since 2009. And obviously that first time was last year at 276.3. Right. So, and I looked at 2012 and I looked at all those other ones and they all started with a 3. And I was like, okay. Well, I mean,
since 1990, to your point, Vince, like saying just holding him below 300 is not bold.
Yeah, right.
That's fair. But your point is that, I didn't mean to critique your point. Your point is that they're going to accomplish something was not to say, okay, is it going to be 290, 280, 270, 260? Your point was it's going to be below 300 again. And since they've been keeping this statistic since 1990, Vince, they've only had 2 seasons total of under 300.
Right. So it is bold in that regard.
It is, exactly. They're going to do something they haven't done in over 30 years.
Right.
I mean, that's bold.
You're right.
And so to your point, that part is bold. So it's not so much the under 300 specifically, like mine's more specific of where they're going to be specifically.
Yeah.
Yours is more just generally under 300, which is something they have not done back-to-back years since
ever.
They since 1990. They have done it in the past, but it's like, again, football was a little different back in the day.
Correct.
And so, cause like, I believe like in 66 and 65 and 66, Vince, they held opponents to under 200 yards a game in back-to-back seasons.
Yeah, that'll never happen again.
So,
I'm just saying.
Just for context, Notre Dame's defense in 1966, a title team, the year that they went 9-0-1, tied Michigan State, won Ara Parseghian's first national championship. They held opponents to 187.6 yards per game. The best average in all of college football last season was the Michigan at 247.0. And going back to 2009, so that'd be Wisconsin in 21. Let's go back here. Since 2009, this just quick look at this statistic chart that we're looking at. The best performance that a defense has had was 2011 Bama team had 183.6. The next best team was a 261.5. So like that 2011 Bama defense was generational. And so you just don't see things like that happen. And to have it happen back to back not going to happen. Like I said, Bama, it gave up the 183.6 in 2011. In 2010, they gave up 286.4. And in 2012, they gave up 250. Right. That was an anomaly.
Right.
And so you are correct, Vince, that it would be a very impressive. I was not trying to dismiss your point.
Oh, you even took it a step further, which I love.
Context of why the sub 300 matters, because they're saying that they're going to do it for back-to-back 300. Yeah, dude, they could give up 25 more yards per game and still be under 300. But the point would be a level of back-to-back dominance we just haven't seen in a long time.
Right.
And that's something to be kind of excited about. For sure, yeah.
So I guess technically I piggybacked off of yours, so I'll just shoot my next one out there, Bryan, because we were kind of in the same neighborhood there. I went with sack totals for my second one, and I said the defense will account for more than 40 sacks for only the second time since 2009. They had 41 in 2021, and in my conversation with you prior to the show, the Notre Dame record is 41.5. So they are going to be knocking on the door, if not breaking the sack record this season, is my bold prediction.
So just so people understand, the record for sacks since 1998 at Notre Dame, and they don't have anything before that, but the record for sacks since 1998 was set in 1996, same year that Notre Dame set the yards average that I said that they're going to break. And they had 41.5. Now, Freeman's team came close to that in 2021. Freeman's defense 41. But here's the difference. That Freeman defense had 13 games. That 41 and a half in 1996 only played 11 games.
Oh, there's 2 less games. Okay.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. So I that was one of mine, Vince, that they're going to set the quote unquote modern sack record, which was set in 1996 with it's funny. So Notre Dame's they need an editor like I need an editor for my stories. But the thing says sacks and in parentheses minimum 30 since 1998. That's what it says, right? So in the top 7, they have 96, 92, and 94. And it's like, well, those are both pre-1998, but whatevs.
But whatever, you gotcha.
I can't be judging, that because I make plenty of mistakes of my own proofing. But
there was a drought in there as I was going back and looking at sack totals where they were in there was somewhere they were below 20. There were many years where they had 20-ish, you know what I mean? And so, 40 is a really, really good number. Okay. Mm-hmm. And that speaks to how athletic and fast and, third year of the defense and all of those things combined. Plus what we're hoping is a bit of a resurgence or renaissance or, well, just frankly, doing anything from the Viper position would be fantastic in that regard as well. So I 41's a big number. Don't get me wrong. 41 and a half is a big number, but I still think this defense has a great opportunity to do that for a multitude of reasons. One of which I think teams are going to be behind a lot against Notre Dame, and they're going to have to be throwing the ball, and Notre Dame's going to be able to pin their ears back and come get, So I think that's part of it. I really do. I think there's going to be a lot of trailing going on for Notre Dame opponents. So that went into my thinking on not only the talent that Notre Dame has, obviously it's there, but I think that a lot of teams are going to be trailing, and they're going to have to be trying to put the ball in the air to try to come back. And so I think Notre Dame's going to get some extra opportunities to kind of get after and sack the quarterback and things of that nature. So it's a two-prong bold prediction, but still, yeah.
I dig that one. And mine was, as I said, one of mine was the same as yours.
Cool.
So it was that they would have at least 42 sacks this season. So what's your last one, Vince?
I had 3. So one? Yep, that was my last one. Yep.
Mine is Notre Dame won't force 30 turnovers this season, which will be among the best in the nation.
I was going to say, where does that land as far
last year would have led the nation. In 2022, it would have tied for 3rd. It would have tied for 2nd among Power 5 teams. In 2021, it would have tied for 5th. It would have been 2nd among Power 5 teams, although Cincinnati is now a Power 5 team. They weren't the year that they had that.
Gotcha.
And forget 2020. And then it would have tied for amongst Power 5 teams, would have tied Clemson in 2020 and Baylor for most in 2020. And so that's a very, very good number. That's going to put you among the best in the nation when you're putting up those kind of numbers.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt about it. So that's your last one, correct?
It's my last one for defense. Like I said, I tried to come up with some others, but it was hard to, in order to get bold based on how good they were last year, it's almost just like now we're just being stupid.
Right.
Like now we're just like, okay, that's not even real. I wanted to try to pick some things that were realistic.
Sure.
And for the Notre Dame offense, there's a lot of areas that they need to get a lot better. For the defense, it's kind of like, well, you're ranked in the top 7 in like 13 or 14 different categories. Like, how much better can you get in some of those? They were ranked in the top 5 actually, in just pass defense. They ranked in the top 3 to 5 in like 6 or 7 different categories. So it's like, how much bolder can you get before you just sound silly? Like, we wanted to be bold. We wouldn't sound like just 2 crazy homers just out here saying they're going to win every game by 50. And, it's just like, so the defense made it hard, Vince. They made it very hard. But, those are mine. So, and we were very much on the same page with a lot of those.
And I do want to, in case people don't understand or whatever, Bryan and I, we talk about what categories we want to talk about as far as, hey, we're going to do team, we're going to do individual, we're going to do all that. And then we kind of put together our own. Like, we don't discuss them with each other. We kind of put them together. And then when I'm done, I usually send them over to Bryan, and he purposely didn't open mine while he was working on his. And, so we don't really collaborate. Now, before the show starts, a lot of times we'll like, hey, let's see if we've gotten into the same or close, and we can kind of tie them together. But we do these on our own, and it was funny because we kind of had a bunch of our defensive team ones that were very, very similar. So just want to throw that out there. It's not like it was a group think thing. It's individual.
But it's just like, but the point is the couple areas that we looked at were maybe some of the ones they might be able to get better at: turnovers, sacks, and yards.
Yes.
So
because they're already really good at most everything defensively, right?
Yeah.
And so, all right, it's going to be a fun year. All right, some individual defensive bold predictions. Bryan, why don't you lead us off here with your first individual bold prediction?
Well, I'm going to stay with sacks because I believe I'm going to prescribe or go with the we've talked about this before, Vince, where a lot of the best teams in sacks are not teams that have like a guy that racks up a lot of sacks, but rather as a team, they have, a lot of different dudes. And so if you look at like last year, for example, Penn State had the most sacks amongst all power. Actually, Penn State led the nation in sacks with 49. And the highest they had was 7.5. Adisa Isaac had 7.5 last year. When you look at, I believe Florida State had one guy over 7. And that was Jared Verse, who had 9. Florida State was, let's see here, second amongst Power 5 teams. And this is last year's Power 5 teams. They ranked 4th overall, second among Power 5 teams with 46 sacks. And their highest guy was 9. And then you look at some of the other teams in sacks. Texas A&M was also very high in sacks last year. They ranked, let's see, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th among all Power 5 teams in sacks. Their highest sack per game average was 8. And so just letting people kind of see, like, just because I'm saying this, it's like, how does that fit with what you said about all the sacks you're going to have? It's going to be a by committee approach more so, but I do think the breakout star on defense from a pass rushing standpoint will be Boubacar Traore, who I have as leading Notre Dame in sacks this year, and I predict he will have at least 8 sacks on the season. So that is I think that's a pretty bold prediction.
I would agree with you wholeheartedly that is a bold prediction. Yes, absolutely. My first one is also what I feel is a bold prediction because it hasn't been done in a few years. And because of the supposed 5-man rotation at linebacker, this is going to be difficult. But I have Jack Kaiser leading the team in tackles, which is not that far out there. But I have him getting 90 or more tackles. Now, the last time Notre Dame had a 100-tackle guy was J.D. Bertrand. It was a few years ago.
It's a different defense.
But he was going to say, but since then, no one has even come close to 100, right? But the difference for me is, yes, I have no reason not to believe that there's going to be a 5-man linebacker rotation and all of those different things. But I also believe that Jack Kaiser is going to be on the field a lot this season.
Yeah.
I just do. I just don't think that they're going to pull his experience off the field very often. I also think he's got a nose for the football. He's going to be around the football a lot, and you're not going to want to pull his production off the field either. And so I've got a really good feeling about Jack Kaiser's year. He's internally motivated. He is, from everything that we've heard, everything is going very well for him as far as at practice and things of that nature. But I mean, he flat out said it. He's like, I came back to be the dude. And I think he's going to live up to that. So that's why I have him. It's a high tackle number.
Yeah.
So like part of it's bold, part of it's not, right? Like,
and also Notre Dame is not one of those teams like loads up like 1 million assisted tackles.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Like there's a kid for Old Dominion that racked up like 8,000 tackles last year.
Yes.
And what's his
very generous stat?
Jason Henderson had 170 tackles last year.
Ridiculous.
Their number 2 tackler, Wayne Matthews, had 135 tackles, and their number 3 tackler had 107 tackles. But here's the thing. Jason Henderson last year had only 52 solo tackles.
But he had 120 assisted tackles.
Right. He had 118 assisted tackles. The other kid, Wayne Matthews, had 135 tackles. He only had 8 solo tackles.
8?
38 solo tackles. He had 97 assisted tackles.
That's ridiculous.
They had another kid that had 107 tackles, a kid named Terry Jones. He had 30 solo tackles. So, like, for context, the kid that had 170 tackles had 52 solo tackles last season. to give you a little bit of context, J.D. Bertrand had 45 in only 12 games in 2021. J.D. Bertrand had 63 solo tackles in 2021 when he led the team in 101 tackles.
So 40 assisted, give or take. Yeah.
Kyle Hamilton of 2020 had 51 solo tackles and only finished with 63 total. Mm-hmm. Jeremiah Wusu-Koramoah had 54 solo tackles in 2019. He finished with 80 on the season. Tavon Coney is the closest you're going to get to that. He had 63 solos in 2018, 123 total. He had 60 assisted tackles that season. That's about more normal for a Mike linebacker. This joker had 118 assisted tackles.
This joker.
If Notre Dame handed out tackles the way that Old Dominion hands out tackles, they're going to have 4 guys or at least over 100 tackles this year.
Right.
Like, this is just you get an assist, you get an assist. If you were on the field when a guy got tackled in bounds, you get an assist.
There are people that, I mean, you're not, I know you're being sarcastic, but you're kind of not. Like, you know, a defensive coordinator be like, they're flying to the football, they're gang tackling.
Right.
You know, they're not all in on it, okay?
Right. I don't know how a team that gave up 27.2 yards per game and gave up almost 400 yards of offense has 5 guys with over 80 tackles, but, you know, whatevs.
Was like 8 guys get a tackle every play, basically, is what that means.
Like, their number 6 leading tackler is a cornerback. He's the first guy they had on their list that had more solos than assists. They had another guy that had 46 total tackles, Vince. He had 9 solos. 9.
This is comedy.
Like, it's stupid. It's just absolute. So the point is, Notre Dame is not one of those teams. If anything, I think Notre Dame's a little bit
stingy,
maybe too stingy on assisted tackles, to be completely honest with you. But so when you're making your statistical analysis, just keep that in mind.
Right.
That's kind of like Iowa had a kid that had 171 tackles last year, and he had a lot. Iowa gives out a lot of assists, but it was 79 to 92. That's kind of realistic for a Mike. Right? Like Miami of Ohio had a kid that had 143 tackles last year. He had 74 solos, 69 assists. That's a really good season. And then you got some of these other teams that just hand out assists like they're candy.
Right.
You know, Eastern Michigan had a guy that had 143 total tackles last year. He had 47 solos. So it's like some of these are just stupid. So just ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. So that's not what Notre Dame is doing.
No, and that's why I put the number at 90, not 170 or whatever, you know, some ridiculous
For
number.
Context, in the last 5 years, there's only been one Notre Dame linebacker that went above 82 in a season. That was JD in 2021.
Right, which is why I looked back and looked at the totals and things like that, and that's why I set the number where I did. I was going to say 100. There's a nice round number. But I felt like because of the rotation and things, that's a little bit too bold.
And some blowouts.
Yeah.
I mean, I see Jack coming out at least 4 or 5 times at the end of the third quarter.
So that's why I still felt 90 was bold. You know what I mean?
Yes. And the other point, too, Vince, is in 2021, Notre Dame didn't have a whole lot of blowouts.
Right.
I mean, you know, like they had to come from behind to beat him. They had to hold off Florida State late in that game. If you remember, they barely beat Toledo. I mean, this year's version of Notre Dame, J.D. Bertrand's off the field at the beginning of the fourth quarter against Toledo, right? I mean, you know, that season, I mean, you had to Purdue was a 60-minute game. Wisconsin, they were losing early in the fourth quarter. You weren't taking your starters off the field that game. They lost to Cincinnati. Virginia Tech was a 4-quarter game. They ended up beating USC by 15. That was a 4-quarter game. North Carolina, they won by 10. That was a 4-quarter game. Wasn't really till you got down to Navy and Virginia in November. You had back-to-back games of Navy, Virginia, Georgia Tech, and Stanford where you had any chance to kind of get JD off the field. And it just so happens that during that stretch, he had three of his four lowest tackle games of the season. Was during that stretch. He had 4 against Virginia, 8 against Navy, 4 against Georgia Tech, 5 against Stanford. Games where they blew the team out and he was off the field in the fourth quarter. That's the point that I'm making. Jack's going to have I believe, a lot more games like that. JD didn't have a whole lot of those in November. He was on the field a lot in 2021 because the starters were in all those games until late in the game because they sucked on offense, or they weren't very good on defense, but their offense they They just kept leaving teams, hang around, man. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
How much they let teams hang around, but it is what it is. It is what it is.
Is it my turn or yours? I can't even. I said tackles, so it's yours.
Yeah, we'll go with mine. I'm predicting a breakout season from Riley Mills. I think Riley Mills is going to be dominant for Notre Dame this year. That's my bold prediction. He's going to have minimum 10 tackles for loss, minimum 5 sacks, and he will earn All-American honors. So I believe Notre Dame will once again have an All-American defensive tackle. I think this time, however, it will be Riley Mills. I think Howard Cross's presence will be part of that because obviously he's going to get more attention early, but it's also built around the fact that I think Riley's just going to have a breakout season. I think Riley's going to be very good this season. Again, we'll see. He was very productive last year in a lot of in disruptions. Now he's got to get more productive on the ball. And that's the thing is Riley does a lot of good things prior to the point of having to make the tackle. Mm-hmm. And that's where I think his jump this season is going to come, is he's going to make more plays on the ball. Because if you look at him, he had a higher stop percentage, like a per snap stop rate. That's a run statistic. And he had a higher pressure rate per snap than Howard Cross did last year. Howard Cross led the defense with 39 pressures. 8 of them ended with a hit on the quarterback, and he did that on 341 pass rushes. Riley Mills had 32 pressures, 12 of which ended with hits on the quarterback. He did that on 258 pressures. So he was the better per snap producer last season, and I think he breaks out this season and has a monster season. What say you, Vince? What's yours? First of all, do you have any thoughts on? Am I too crazy for that?
Oh, no, I know you've been high on Riley Leonard. I mean, right.
I've done that a million times this summer, dude. It's all good.
Right, Riley Mills. I know you're high on Riley Mills, and for good reason. I mean, look, you see him. I mean, he's one of those guys that's getting off the bus first, right? When we talk about who's getting off the bus first and all, Riley Mills is that guy. Like he's a mountain of a man. He came back for a reason. He kind of the same thing I said about Kaiser, I'm saying about Mills. I mean, he's playing with a chip on his shoulder, right? He doesn't want to be in the shadow in the defensive line anymore. He wants to make a statement, and he has all the tools to do so. I'm with you, man. I think he's got a great opportunity to make some waves. And again, some of that will be due to the fact that Howard Cross is going to get a lot of attention in the middle too. Look, you can't double team everybody like that. That's not possible. And if you do, then the ends are going to have a great season. You know what I mean? Or a linebacker is going to have a great game or whatever the case may be.
They're throwing a flag for too many men on the field.
Right. Exactly. You can't double everybody. They're not allowed to play with 22. So I love where Riley Mills is right now in his ability to have a breakout season. And I mean, he was really good last year already, and so breakout is a strong word. But we're talking about national accolades and things like that. And
he's got to be more productive.
Exactly.
He has to be more productive, not just disruptive, but productive. And then my breakout calls for him to be more productive.
Yeah. So there you go.
What's yours?
My next one, I think could be taken as a negative from some people, but I will need to explain myself just a tad. I have on here that Xavier Watts will not be a unanimous All-American again this season. Now, there is reasons for that. I think that, one of the reasons that he got those accolades last year was because of the stats that he was able to put up. I mean, he's got a nose for the football. He's around the football all the time, right? He was there to get some tipped interceptions. He was there, when Caleb Williams, who, he made him look silly, right? I mean, there's certain things that Xavier Watts is very good at. Don't get me wrong, but everybody in the country knows that now.
Yes.
Right.
And that's the thing, right?
And yes, then they are going to do their best to pick on the other safety, whoever that happens to be, right? Whether it's
and the nickel. I think teams are going to go after the nickel a lot more this year than they did last year as well.
Good call. So look, is it going to be difficult to avoid Benjamin Morrison and Xavier Watts? Yeah, it's going to be difficult to avoid both of them, but they're going to try. And so I don't know that he's going to get the opportunities to get the stats that he had last year in order to get back on all of these lists.
And I don't know that he has even now, I don't know that he has the reputation to just get the benefit of the doubt the way that Caleb Williams will.
Yeah, I know. Right.
Because he wasn't a highly ranked recruit. So it was considered like a coming out of nowhere thing where Caleb Williams and Malachi Starks are both highly ranked recruits at Georgia and Ohio State. So now they're getting benefit of the doubt. Now, again, those are two incredibly talented players. I'm not at all saying that those guys aren't excellent players. They absolutely are. It's just they don't necessarily have to put up the kind of production like Malachi Starks could, last year, 52 tackles, 3 interceptions, 7 pass breakups. If he has that kind of season this year, he'll be a first-team All-American because the assumption is he's an elite player. If Xavier Watts has that same exact production, he would be behind. Like if Caleb Downs, Malachi Starks, and Xavier Watts all have 50 tackles, 3 interceptions, 6 pass breakups, Xavier's second team, those 2 guys are first team just because of reputation. And that's just facts. That's just how it works. And it's okay. But I also think the fact that with what you said, Vince, it's going to be hard for him to outproduce those guys because of how much I agree with you that teams are going to try to avoid him as much as possible.
Yes, 100%. So it could be a negative if you want to spin it that way, but I just think it's more of a practical situation as to why I have that on there.
I'm going to stay in the secondary, and it kind of piggybacks a little bit off of it. I didn't do it on this way, Vince, but and I'm a little ticked that Andrew Gilmore stole my bold prediction, man. I'm just kidding. He actually went one above me, but I kind of said at least. So Christian Gray, will lead the team with at least 5 interceptions this season, which will then springboard him into 2025, where he will begin the season as a preseason All-American.
It's almost like a twofer.
Yes.
Got you.
Yep,
I like that. Right. So prediction for next year because of the production of this year.
Yes.
I like that.
I'm also a little concerned about that pick because if Andrew Gilmore sees it happening and I'm seeing it happening, I don't know that me and Andrew can be thinking the same thing a whole lot. So I'm going to have to rethink my whole prediction a little bit. But
it's a fair statement. It's a fair statement.
I love Andrew. I'm just giving you a hard time. But yeah,
I'll allow it.
I think Christian Gray has at least 5 picks this year. And
love that.
We'll go into next season as a preseason All-American because of how good he looks this season.
My next one, and I believe you are kind of in this neighborhood for one of these as well. I had picked KVA to be a freshman All-American. I think Kingston Viliama-Asa has a great opportunity, with this rotation and with what he's going to be allowed to do in this defense. Look, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think they're going to put him in position to lead the defense, right? I think they're going to put him in a position to maximize what he's really good at, which is pretty much everything. But I think they're going to let him get after the quarterback. He's going to be able to make some highlight reel type plays, which is going to get his name on the radar of a lot of places. I think he's going to be able to, make plays in the passing game. Here's what I will say from what I've actually seen from him in practice. That man gets into his pass drops faster than anybody I've seen in a really long time. And he has a nose for the football when it's in the air, which is not something necessarily linebackers, especially middle linebackers, are known for. And he does a really good job of that. He also does a really good job of getting after the quarterback. So I think he's going to be able to make some splash plays as to where now he's on the radar, freshman All-American, that kind of stuff. And then that just springboards him into whatever he's going to end up doing next year. But I think he's going to get some postseason accolades as a freshman, freshman All-American type stuff. So that's my final individual bold prediction.
So mine is a similar along those lines, Vince. I have my bold prediction and also includes freshmen. And I think this is a little bold when you consider how loaded Notre Dame is coming back on defense this season. But
this is bold for you. Yeah.
I believe that Notre Dame is going to have 2 freshman All-Americans, and it will be 2 of, and one of these 3 players, and 2 of them will be freshman All-Americans. Those picks they'll either be Kingston, Bryce Young, or Leonard Moore. 2 of those 3 will end up being freshman All-Americans. Now, keep in mind the way freshman All-American honors work. You don't always have starters named freshman All-Americans.
Right.
Because if a guy has 45 tackles, Niles Morgan, I believe in 2014 was a freshman All-American. He had 47 tackles because there just weren't a ton of linebackers that were playing a bunch. I think because Kingston is going to be part of the rotation, I think he's going to play some Mike. He's going to play some Will. He's going to play special teams. He's going to be a 40-plus tackle guy this season. And I think he's going to also potentially get some pass rush opportunities this year at times as well. I think Bryce Young is going to get some third down pass rush, 5-sack Aaron Lynch type of rookie season. or potentially Leonard Moore as sort of a rotation corner if somebody goes down, or
Sure.
that's the thing, is a lot of these guys too are in that conversation, Vince, because if somebody goes down, I think those guys are going to have chances to step in and be the guy. So I'm going to say 2 freshmen are going to be All-Americans this year.
That's bold. I mean, the 2 freshman thing that's a
freshman All-American.
Yeah,
just so we're
no,
clear.
I get you.
Freshman All-American.
Yeah. And that was what mine was too. I wasn't predicting him because I don't think, maybe KVA starts a game, something like that. I just don't see him overtaking necessarily this year, those 2 guys. So I'm not prepared to go that far, but he's going to get enough playing time and he's going to be able to make enough splash plays where freshman All-American, I think, is absolutely in cards.
Not like blocking a punt. Now that's technically not defense, but that stuff factors in
absolutely
to how a guy is perceived. And
so 100%.
That is, and even the teams that, like, some people don't consider Notre Dame's redshirt freshmen as freshmen because Notre Dame doesn't call them redshirt freshmen on their roster. Some of them do. But Drake's not even eligible for that because Drake played almost every game last year on special teams. So that's why he's not in the conversation. And I also believe freshman All-America team should be freaking freshmen, not redshirt freshmen who are second-year players. It should be based off of your eligibility. It should be based off your status in school, not your eligibility. It should be your first year with that team. And so I kept it traditional on that.
Right.
With who? Because if you wanted to go redshirt freshman, I could throw Boubacar, I could throw Armo Mukum, I could throw, several guys into this conversation. Jaden Alsbury as potential, guys in the mix for that. But I wanted to keep it the way it should be, which is true freshmen on that team. So that's my last one.
Yep, me too. That's going to do it for our defensive side of the football. Stick around. We got a little bit more to come your way, but make sure you hit the like button, the subscribe button, that notification bell, share with your family and friends, all the good stuff. We'd really appreciate it. And of course, boards.irishbreakdown.com. There's always good stuff on the boards. A lot of stuff actually over the last couple of days has really sprung up, and there's even some intel in there. And so, yeah, you want to make sure that you're on the boards. Definitely. So get on over boards.irishbreakdown.com. It's game week for the most part, and we are. I just think game week
tomorrow it'll be starts game week.
Yes, game week tomorrow, and we're gonna have a lot of fun stuff to talk about, and the conversation only amps up obviously on the boards during that time. So boards.irishbreakdown.com.
I did want to throw a little shout out too here to my guy DK with a big super chat. I appreciate that very much. He said for Rita Vet Hotel Fund. I appreciate that very, very much. Also want to give a little special shout out to Drury Inn and Suites. Angela, we got to Purdue the weekend that Move In was happening at Purdue.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And rates at Drury were like 300 something a night the first night. And then it was like 250 the next night. And then it was, we paid, I won't say how much we paid, but let's just say it was way less than what it was supposed to be. Because she explained to them what was going on and not in a woe is us way, but just, hey, let you guys know we're not sure when the stay is going to end.
Yeah, right.
We may have to re-up each day. And like somebody from Drury called and wiped out her first night, which was over $300, just wiped it out. And then gave her discounts the rest of the week. The people there were just so nice to her, so gracious to her.
That's awesome.
So understanding of her. And so Drury Inn and Suites, we've always liked to stay there because they're super pet friendly and it's a very clean hotel. They have a very good breakfast normally. So I always kind of like staying at Drury, but like they are my go-to hotel now. If there's a Drury where I'm going, I'm staying there, even if it's more expensive, because there's something to be said for just being not having the nicest place, which Drury's are very nice and clean. And it's not even about having the best rates. Like when I spend my money somewhere, I want to know that we are valued, that you care about how you treat your customers. And there was no reason for them to be the way they were to my wife. There was no reason to show the grace, the mercy, the patience, the understanding, and then to sacrifice their own financial gain, because we never asked for it. I never asked for a discount. Angela never asked for a discount. We weren't saying, woe is us. That's why we're telling you about this. It was simply just to let them know, I don't know how long I'm going to be staying. And so we just wanted to find out what's the policy for us to be able to re-up. Just so incredibly kind, so incredibly gracious. And of course it helped us out as well. Financially, it really helped us out a ton because we spent a lot on, I mean, Rita got 3 blood transfusions. I mean, she was staying overnight in their emergency care, and it was not cheap. It was worth it to, to fight for her. And she's doing a lot better now. We'll see, she's still got a couple days to get out of the woods, but she gets better and better every day. But just to know that my wife was 2.5 hours away from me and by herself and being treated with such kindness and care was meant the world to me. And that's more important than anything else. And so Drury Inn and Suites, we appreciate it. It was the one in Lafayette, Indiana, but all Drury Inn and Suites, like that's my go-to place now. They didn't ask me to say that. No one's said, hey, we'll do this if you advertise, nothing like that. This is just me, Bryan Driscoll, as a husband and, and someone who loves my dogs, just so thankful that my wife was treated that way and treated with that kind of kindness. And so I just want to give a big shout out to Drury Inn and Suites for their kindness and care. And then of course, the IB community was phenomenal as well, but I appreciate it all very much. But when people do things right, I believe they deserve to be praised. And so Drury Inn and Suites, we appreciate y'all, man. So very much that they've got my business from here on out. No doubt about it.
Final segment for today, Bryan. We are going to do some team bold predictions. So just, overall team and it's not specifically offense, not specifically defense, right, but just, overall outcome, overall team stuff. And I was just kind of throwing stuff in there as they came into my head. So I got a bunch on there. And then we're also going to throw in a few college football bold predictions. Just why not? Just a little bow on the box for you. Not necessarily even something that was planned, but we're going to have some fun with that to kind of wrap things up. So
and I ended up doing 4, Vince. I added one at the end.
Beautiful.
So you did 3?
Team or college football? Team, I have 5 total.
Okay, so actually. Then you start. So that way, because the person who has the most should go first. So that way it's...
Yes.
Yeah. So anyway.
Agreed. Okay.
Have at it, my friend.
So here we go. So like I said, some of mine are kind of specific. Some of them are like off the field, but more team oriented. But anyway, here's how I'm going to start it off. And this one is interesting. So it's definitely bold. I have Notre Dame winning 3 games in the college football playoff. So they're going to win 3 games. So that means they're going to play 15 games. No, they're going to play 16 games because they're winning 3 and they're playing a 4th. So Notre Dame will win 3 games in the college football playoff and defeat either Ohio State, Clemson, or Florida State to do it. And the reason I picked those 3 specific schools is because you've got redemption against Ohio State, you've got redemption against Clemson, and you may have to beat Florida State twice to do that. So kind of a rematch one and then 2 redemption ones. They're all rematches if you count over the last 2 years, or the last year for that matter. So they're going to win 3, but they'll have to go through somebody that they've either lost to in the last year or played this year. So that's my first bold prediction, Bryan.
Mine is this: Marcus Freeman will at least win one of the major Coach of the Year awards. There's a couple. There's like Home Depot, Bobby Dodd. He'll win at least one of those. And one of Notre Dame's 2 coordinators, I don't know which one, will win the Frank Broyles Award. Either Al Golden or Mike Denbrock will win the Frank Broyles Award, which goes to the nation's best assistant coach.
Nice.
That is my prediction for my first bold prediction.
Love that. That's fantastic.
They all build. They all kind of build.
Yes, they do.
Mine build to my final.
Okay, so my next bold prediction, and this is kind of a weird one, but I was like, you know what? When I was doing these, they announced that game day was going to be at Texas A&M next week. So, and not surprising, I kind of assumed that was going to be the case. But I saw that, and I was like, you know what? They go to the big games, right? Notre Dame is going to have some big games this year. So I'm saying that game day will be at a Notre Dame game, either on the road or at home, a minimum of 2 times this season. So they're going to be at Florida State just because their first game day ever was Notre Dame, Florida State at Notre Dame. So this is like the 31st year, I think, that they've been doing it, whatever. So I think they're definitely going to be at that one. They're definitely going to be at A&M. And I think there's a chance if things go kind of the way we think they might go, I think there's a chance that they could be in LA as well at the end of the season. Definitely possible. I haven't checked the rest of the schedule, but I think that's a possibility as well. So at least twice Notre Dame will be dealing with game day at their game.
I'm looking at that weekend for Florida State, Vince, and so Georgia plays at Ole Miss. That's a potential one.
Yeah.
Auburn plays at Alabama plays at LSU. That's a potential one. Washington at Penn State, maybe. Oklahoma at Missouri, maybe. Clemson at Virginia Tech, maybe.
Yeah.
If Virginia Tech's as good as I think that they're going to be. Miami at Georgia Tech. Maybe.
After yesterday.
But and the thing about the LSU Alabama one, like maybe they're both ranked really high, but I kind of feel like they don't like to just do the same ones over and over and over again.
Right.
So, maybe Georgia Ole Miss might be the most biggest challenge.
Sure.
Other than maybe Penn State or in Washington, depending on how Washington is. But yeah, that could be a
now Florida State can screw this up for everybody if they.
That's right. They already started to.
Yeah, started to. That's what I'm saying. If they can't get their stuff figured out.
To your point, you said two, right? I mean, and it could even be something as simple as like, okay, after Saturday, we're like, well, but how do we know that maybe they'll be in Atlanta for Notre Dame, Georgia Tech?
Yeah, that's definitely possible.
A couple weeks because they love being in Atlanta. For things. ESPN's got like their little second home in Atlanta, SEC title game and all those other things. So
sure.
I dig that one. My number 2, Vince, is Notre Dame will go 12-0. They will get the 5 seed. These are all part of it. As part of that 12-0, they're going to blow out Florida State. Now, I think Florida State's going to rally back from their loss last week. I did not think that Georgia Tech could win that game. I thought they could keep it close. I said all summer, I just don't think Georgia Tech's capable of pulling off that upset. I was clearly wrong. But what we learned about that game is Florida State is not as physical as I think they need to be. And they're not as mentally tough as they need to be. Flying over to Europe and doing all that, the rain mess with their heads. Coming up to South Bend, Indiana in November is going to be something that they're probably not going to be too fond of. So part of that 12-0 record is going to be include a blowout over Florida State. 12-0, 5 seed, blowout Florida State.
Okay, yours do build on each other. All right. My third bold prediction for the team is because of the way this season goes down, right? I think Marcus Freeman inks a big extension following the season. So, and it honestly, it could be after the regular season. I don't think that they'll try to squeeze it in between the regular season and the playoffs. There's not as much time, obviously, as there used to be. If this was in I should say a normal year, but if this was like 10 years ago, for example, the schedule, like where Notre Dame's done on Thanksgiving and then they may not play again until January 1st, then I think they possibly get it done during that month-long period. But I don't think they're going to get it done after the regular season before the playoffs because there's only going to be 2 weeks in there, right? So after the season is over, I think Marcus Freeman inks himself to a nice, healthy extension at Notre Dame.
Okay, I dig that. My third one, Vince, is Notre Dame is going to set a school record in wins this season. The school record is 12.
Right.
They are going to beat Memphis in the first round. They are going to beat Big 12 champ Kansas State in the second round. They are going to beat number 1 seed Ohio State in the semifinals, and they're going to beat down the big bad Bulldogs of Georgia in the national championship game for their 12th national title, which then obviously will set a new standard that is going to be impossible to be beaten because unless things change, until they expand the playoff to 16 or 32 or whatever else they're eventually going to get to, it's going to set a record that you can't be beat. So how's that for bold prediction,
I was going to say, you want to talk about setting the bar for bold predictions. Like that bar has been set.
I felt like with a lot of the team stuff and individual stuff, it was kind of like none of them individually were super crazy.
Yeah. Well,
they're not too far off of what they've done in the past. Like, okay, they score 40 points a game. Right. Okay. What, 0.8 more than they scored last year? You know what I mean? Like,
I get it.
It's like it was hard because of how statistically good they were last year. So some of the individual players, but so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna really have some fun with this in the team one. And again, these are all bold predictions that are bold and are not things we're gonna be betting our mortgages on.
No,
but also things we think are somewhat realistic to happen. These aren't like, they're going to beat Georgia by 50 and Ohio State by 62. And it's good. They're playing on freshman level of NCAA or college football 2025. It's just, I think they can genuinely beat all those teams. I do. It's going to be hard, but I think I certainly do. Yeah. So that's my third bold prediction, Vince?
I don't know how I can follow that, but I'm going to give it a shot. So I can't follow Notre Dame winning a national championship. My next one, in no particular order, really, is I have Notre Dame going undefeated at home this season. Now,
Okay.
maybe that's not as bold as it maybe once was 24 hours ago, or not even 20, but like 30 hours ago, with the way Florida State looked against Georgia Tech. But, they didn't go undefeated at home last year. And so I am saying that they're going to go undefeated at home this year.
I mean, they went from after losing to Georgia in 2017.
They won a whole stretch.
They won the rest of their games at home in 17, 18, 19, 20, and their next loss at home was against Cincinnati in 2021.
And then they've had some losses at home.
Right, Stanford,
Marshall,
and Ohio State.
Yes.
In the last 2 years. So
right.
You're saying they get back on track.
They're getting back on track. That's right. And I thought about going like the ACC streak and getting that going again. But I'm going to stick with the home. Like you got to start
turf somewhere, right?
Right, exactly.
Yep, I got you.
Got to defend the home turf first. And it's not a super bold prediction, like I said, especially after yesterday with Georgia Tech and Florida State. But I'm still sticking there.
My final bold prediction for the Notre Dame football team, Vince, is that Notre Dame will have at least 10 players drafted in the 2025 NFL draft, which will set I believe, I think they will at least tie the modern record. Modern being since they went to 7 rounds. I believe the most they've had since then is 10. It might be 11. Actually, I'm going to go look here real quick because I know that Lou Holtz had one of those years that had a ton of dudes. So 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 in 1991, but that was a 10 rounds and 10 rounds. So let's see here. 1993, they had 9. 1994, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 in 1994 is the current modern record. Modern meaning since the draft went to 7 rounds, which I believe 93 or 94 was the first year that happened. The most they had is 10. So I believe they will at least tie, if not break that record. And I mentioned the other day, there's 14 to 15 candidates to potentially get drafted.
Yeah,
so
sure.
It's not requiring every guy to get drafted. I mean, you've got Riley Leonard, you've got Chris Mitchell, you've got Bo Collins, you've got Jaden Harrison, you've got Mitchell Evans, you've got RJ Oben, Riley Mills, Howard Cross, Jordan Patelho, Jack Kaiser, Jordan Clark, Xavier Watts, Rod Hurd, Benjamin Morrison. Just right there, that's 14. And I'm sure I'm missing someone. And that's assuming, like, not even predicting anyone leaves early. Jadarian Price has a breakout year. He goes pro early. Something along those lines. Somebody kind of breaks out and you're surprised. But then also the other thing too is if you win the national championship, you're going to get some of your backups drafted. I mean, that's been proven every year. I mean, Georgia wins the title in 21, and John, what's the kid's name? The tight end that they had, who was like their third tight end on that team. And I think he caught like 5 balls that season. Give me a second. What's that? John Fitzpatrick that year caught 5 passes for 55 yards and got drafted.
Right.
The year before he had 10 catches for 95 yards and got drafted. 1 catch the year before that for 22. This is a guy that had 16 career catches and got drafted. Why? Because he played for Georgia.
Right.
It's now there's 2 reasons why teams that win the title tend to have really super high draft picks. Number 1 is because to win a title, you got to have a lot of really good players. I mean, that's duh.
Right.
Number 1. Number 2, you do have guys get overdrafted when you win it. I mean, LSU had a lot of dudes on that 19 title team that got drafted way too high, and they haven't been very good since they got to the NFL because a lot of times the sum is greater than the individual parts.
Sure. And
you kind of get lifted by some really, really superstars. Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Jordan Jefferson, and then everybody else is just really good, not great, but good players, and then that kind of made their team really, really good. Like Clyde Edwards-Helaire should not have been a first-round draft pick. He was drafted because he was on a phenomenal team, and he's played like not a first-round draft pick since he's been there. Lloyd Cushenberry is a guy that got drafted by the Broncos in the 3rd round. Good college football player, but 3rd round, a little too high, but because he was on the champs. So that happened. So if all my things come true, then the 10+ is not exactly like a
It's not really all that bold, right?
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
really not. I mean,
to
it's
be
really
honest.
not. So,
Yeah.
so those are different things that I look for, Vince, and say why you get at least 10 of those guys picked.
I like that. I like that one
Right.
a lot. I think, I mean, yeah, it'll be easy 10 if they win the national championship. Like that's, yeah. I mean, look, Michigan had a good team last year. They did, but they got a boatload of guys drafted. You know what I mean? And they
Sure.
had a boatload of guys get asked to go to the combine.
Like
and,
19 guys
yeah.
invited to the end. Right.
Yeah.
And again,
ridiculous.
They don't win the national championship without a lot of really talented players.
For sure.
Right?
For sure.
I mean, so.
But
right.
some guys are getting overdone because of winning the national title. I mean, It just is what it is. So,
and you want those type of players in your program. You want winners in your program.
Absolutely.
So when you're sitting there drafting in rounds like 4 to 7, and you're trying to decide between this guy, that guy, those things are going to happen. Last year, Michigan had, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 guys get drafted, right? 4 of them were in the 7th round.
Right.
Another was in the 5th. Another was in the 4th. Now, they had a lot of guys taken in the first 2 days. They had 7 taken in the first 3 rounds. But again, there's a lot of those guys that are kind of piled up late in the draft that were more taken because they played in Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
So, we'll see how that plays out. But, that's kind of where I'm at for next. And, I mean, you could even throw like Mitch Jeter in there potentially if James Rendell loses eligibility and has to come out. You could maybe see him go. I mean, so there's plenty of options there for Notre Dame for the draft. So that's mine. What's your final bold prediction?
So my final one is actually very specific as to the first game, right?
Okay.
And we've been talking about Texas A&M so long, it feels like, and this is a bit of, I guess, a giveaway for where I'm at when I'm going to do my prediction on Thursday. But I say no, there's no way. And of course, there's me with my absolutes again. I don't think Notre Dame gives up 21 points. I think it's going to be under 21 points. Texas A&M is going to score on this defense. And you can say whether it's special teams, you can say turnovers, you can say all those different things. At the end of the day, I don't think Texas A&M scores 21. I just don't think they score 21 points against Notre Dame. Number one, I don't think the offense is necessarily going to turn the ball over and lead to points. This defense is too stinking good, man. Say what you want to about Texas A&M's defense. That's fine. Cool. I think everybody is overlooking the effect that Notre Dame's defense will have on this game. And so as a team bold prediction, Texas A&M does not hit 21 on Saturday.
Okay. You ready to wrap up with our final segment, Vince, of some CFB predictions? We're just going to have some fun, throw out a couple of college football predictions, and I know the first one we have in common, Vince. So these can it be anything related to college football? And let's have some fun with it.
First one was easy for me. It came right to my fingers as I was typing them up when you're like, hey, let's do some college football ones. I was like, cool. Michigan's not making the playoff. Like, that was my first one. And there's nothing you can say that's going to get me off of that one. And I don't even think that's a bold prediction. I mean, it is based on a lot of the brackets that people are putting out. A lot of them have Michigan in, which I just don't see it. And so I guess it's bold then because of the national audience, but I'm saying there's no way Michigan makes the college football playoff. So that's my first one.
I can understand a lot of people putting Michigan in, Vince, because of the mantra that I often have, which is you're the champs until somebody beats you.
Sure.
And I can respect that. I can. The only reason that I don't go with that is because I also have always had that caveat, unless there's extenuating circumstances, and losing 19 guys that were selected to compete at the combine, losing your head coach. Your O-line coach gets promoted to NOC gets promoted to head coach. You lose your running backs coach, receivers coach, D coordinator, D-line coach, DB coach. I mean, and then on top of that, first-year coach, dealing like Marcus Freeman was a first-year coach, went 9-4 from a team that won 11 games the year before, had some personnel losses, nothing like what Michigan's going through right now personnel-wise. And on top of that, they got to deal with all this stuff in regard to the cheating scandal, and they're going to release this week the the NCAA is going to release their whatever the thing about Michigan. I forget what it's called. I'm drawing a blank here, but there's too much going on. And Ryan and I have talked about this a lot. Look, the cheating thing is not why Aiden Hutchinson destroyed Ohio State's tackles. It's not why, Ohio State's kind of crumbled physically and emotionally in certain situations. But you also can't ignore the fact that Jim Harbaugh was on the verge of basically kind of getting forced out after the 2020 season, and Michigan had been kind of trending down for several seasons under him. And then all of a sudden, it just total coincidence, Connor Stallions gets hired and Michigan turns things around. And when you look at Jim Harbaugh's record in the, 6 seasons prior to that, they were 49-22. Connor Stallions is hired, and just like that, Michigan goes 40-3. Okay, yes, Jim Harbaugh gets all the credit in the world for how physical that team was and how well coached that team was fundamentally, and they were tough, and they were this, and they were that, and all those things are true. You got to still make in-game adjustments and all that kind of stuff. And they did win playoff games after I think that stuff was kind of stopped from what we believe. But you can't also ignore the advantages that it had. You can't. And so all those things together is why my bold prediction, Vince, is that Michigan will not win more than 8 games in the regular season.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, and their schedule this year is way tougher.
Oh my gosh,
than it was last year.
Schedule was a joke last year.
Way tougher.
Look, they had to win. I realized they had to do it in the playoff and all. I get it.
They had to beat Ohio State, and and there were several things that happened. I mean, they had to beat Penn State without the Stallions. They beat Ohio State, Alabama. I get all that, right? Sure. But yeah, you got to play Texas this year. You got to play USC. You got to play at Washington, at Illinois, Oregon, at Ohio State. I think that they're going to struggle.
Yes.
I think they're going to struggle.
And I'm going to enjoy it.
And I also don't think people are putting enough, with all due respect to Sharon Moore, I don't think people are putting enough on the reality that they did lose Jim Harbaugh, who's a phenomenal coach.
He is. He's a little loony, but he's a really good football coach. I mean, I've always respected Jim Harbaugh from a football coaching perspective. And I'll be honest with you, I really respected him when he was at Stanford and what he was able to do at Stanford and the way that he went about his business, on the football field and just being like, look, I'm going to get big, tough guys. We're going to run it right at your face and we're going to be successful doing that. Like I really dug that when he was at Stanford. I really did. And there was talk when he was at Stanford that, he may come back to the Bears and be the head coach and all that. And at the time, man, I was all for it. Like I was all for Jim Harbaugh coming to the Bears and trying to resurrect the nonsense that's been going on there. And then he goes to Michigan. And it's like, well, now I hate you. So, but then he went a little nutso too. So a little bit of both, but he's still a really, really good football coach. Like at the end of the day, he may not follow all the rules. He may not do all the things he's supposed to do from a college football standpoint, but he's still really good.
Still a heck of a football coach.
Yeah. I even in my hatred of Michigan, I still have to say he's a really good football coach. It is what it is. And you're right. His absence will be felt at some point from a football coaching perspective. His absence is going to be felt.
Before we move on to our final one, Vince, and I'll have you cut this out later, I have a special guest appearance.
What?
Tonight. Come here, baby.
Oh, boy.
Come here. Come.
Is she camera shy?
No, come here. She's still a little weak. Come here. Come. Normally, she jumps up on my lap and stuff.
Yeah,
but
she does.
She's still a little. Come on. There we go. Come on, baby. Come on.
Oh, I saw a glimpse.
She's getting a little shy tonight. Come here. Babe, can you come help her? Come here. There you go. Come here, baby. Come here. There she is. There's Rita, everybody. There she is.
Yeah, she's like, I'm going to get that treat.
Look at that energy. Yeah. So Rita wanted to make a little special appearance tonight. Had to bribe her with treats.
Hey, gotta do what you got to do.
Yeah. So this is her first time downstairs since she's gotten home. So
oh wow, okay.
She's staring at me. I don't have any more, baby.
Yeah,
Mommy's got them all. Mommy's got them all. Now we're not gonna be able to get her to leave since I gave her a treat.
No, that's
So,
okay.
yeah,
That's okay.
So first time she got home and I heard her howl, I was like, oh,
There
see,
it is.
there it is. There
There's
it is.
the howl. I
She wasn't
recognize
doing
it.
that. She hadn't barked in days.
Yeah.
So yeah, there we go.
Great.
So thanks for indulging that. We had some people ask about her. So
Yeah.
got my finger a little bit going after that treat.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
That's fantastic. Couple more college football bold predictions before we get out of here. My next, I only had two. I'd say I came up with two.
Same. I had two. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So
because I've got Notre Dame win the championship. So like, what other bold prediction could I have? Yeah,
that's fair. I was trying to think about, okay, what's new? What do we really not know about college football? All of those different things. And so I went to the playoff again, and there's so much we don't know about how this playoff is going to be put together, right? You've got the committee, what are they going to weigh versus something else? All of these different scenarios. And again, we don't know who's going to have what win-loss record when it's all said and done, and how important is strength of schedule, all of those different things, right? And so I am just of the belief, and there's a lot of people out there, that it's going to be like all SEC, all Big Ten, and that's it. Like that, those are the only representatives in this whole thing. And so I said that no conference will send 4 teams to the college football playoff. I think there's a really good chance that 2 send 3, but I don't think that they're going to get to 4. So is that a bold prediction? It would be if you're talking to somebody south of the Mason-Dixon line, that's for sure. But up here, I'm going to say that no team gets 4 teams. I think the Big Ten would be a stretch getting 4 in. I think SEC people think they're going to get 4 in. That's why they're trying to change. It's why they're trying to change the way the college football playoff is done, right? They want to get all these guarantees and get their teams in. So, but I'm going to say no conference is over 3. So that's my bold prediction.
I have 4 SEC teams in my prediction. So obviously, I think that's bold.
Yeah,
it's not disagree. It's so like I think it's going to be hard to keep 4 SEC teams out just because of the bias that goes into the SEC.
Yeah.
So if 4 of them don't make it, then I think that's quite bold, Vince, actually. So I'm with you on that. And that's going to only cause those 2 conference commissioners to lose their more and push for a 14-team playoff that's going to have guarantees for their league.
Yep.
But I think it's going to hurt their cause. And I'm hoping that you're right, because if they don't get 4 in this year, it's going to hurt their cause. Like, well, you're out now asking us to give you an unfair advantage. Your conference hasn't earned that right. And so you want to give, like, I'd even be okay if, like, they went to a 16-team playoff and the regular season champ and conference champ both get automatic bids. And some years that may be 1 team, some years that may be 2.
I got you.
That's cool. I mean, that's fine. I'd be okay with that, because I personally think regular season should matter more than the conference championship anyway. But hey, that's the reality of it. But yeah, I like where you're at. I hope that's true. Now that's going to be determined on, obviously, Notre Dame's got to take a playoff berth.
Yep.
That's going to be determined on the ACC and the Big 12 both have to also step up. And I'll be honest with you, Vince, I think what happened this weekend might hurt the ACC's chances of getting a second team in, because
seriously,
fair or not, like, this is my point. I said to people, is like, if Notre Dame beats number 9 Florida State at home, or beats number 9 Georgia Tech away from home, the reality is, in the eyes of human beings, they're going to view the number 9 Florida State win as more impressive than the number 9 Georgia Tech win, even though one was at home, one was on the road, because one's Georgia Tech.
Right.
It's Georgia Tech. Now, I don't think that's right or fair, but that's where I'm going with that one. I even thought about, kind of like after yesterday, like bold prediction, neither Florida State, this will be the first year, only the second time since 2012 that the Big Ten or the ACC champ is not going to be Clemson or Florida State. I think the only other year that happened, I believe, since then was 2021 when Pitt won it. But actually, you go back to last time, so from 2011 to 2023, there's only been 1 year that Clemson or Florida State didn't win the ACC. And after yesterday, I could see a scenario where, okay, maybe this is the year. Maybe it is a Miami or a Georgia Tech. So I thought about like something like that. I thought about having some fun that the SEC champ will not be Georgia or Bama for the first time since, I mean, when's the last time that has happened?
Right.
Since 2019, right? I believe is the last time the SEC did not have a champion that was Alabama or Georgia. Am I correct on that? Be LSU at 19, right?
Sounds right. You're better at the history thing than I am.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I believe it is since 2019, I believe. So yeah, because Alabama, Georgia, Alabama. Yeah, and then LSU in 19, then it was Bama in 18, Georgia in 17, Bama in 16, Bama in 15, Bama in 14, Auburn in 13. So those two conferences have been dominated by two teams, primarily with exception of one fluky year where a team jumped in and won it. So, I thought about doing a bold prediction where none of the traditional powers win the three big conferences.
Right. Okay.
Right. Because Big 12 is easy. The two traditional teams that win it all the time are gone.
You're right. Yeah.
But that was something I thought about having is none of the big three, none of the traditional dominant teams in that league of the last decade win it.
That would be bold, especially the SEC, because the Big Ten, you'd be like, well, Oregon's one of the best teams in the Big Ten, and they've got a great shot of winning it. Okay. But yeah, that would be a very, very bold prediction, especially ACC too. But then after yesterday, you'd be thinking, okay, maybe I got something here,
Right. I mean, there's still a lot of football to be played.
My gosh,
right?
Yes.
I mean, a ton of football to be played, but like even the Big Ten, Michigan won it the last 3 years. Ohio State won it in 2019, 18, 17. You got to go back all the way to 16 to have the last time a team that won the Big Ten wasn't Michigan or Ohio State. So, I would love for that, but I just couldn't quite get myself to make that bold prediction. So my final bold prediction, and I don't even know how bold it is, Vince. I think it's a little bit bold. A quarterback will not win the Heisman this year.
It's funny. I actually thought about that, putting that exact thing in, but then I was like, well, then who's it going to be? And I didn't have like a ready answer, in my head, but I was thinking that exact same one. So I'm assuming because you did do it, who do you have? What's your thought process?
I don't know. I don't know who it's going to be honest with you. Like I thought about, going with the running back, but I didn't know who it would be. I thought about maybe going with the receiver. Like that was one that kind of stood out to me, kind of like Devontae Smith in 2020. But yeah, that would kind of be mine. It usually takes some kind of crazy season.
Yes.
For a non-quarterback to win it all. But I just kind of feel like there's going to be no like elite quarterbacks like maybe in recent years. And I think there's going to be some really good performance. Or the other thing is I think there could be the opposite could be there's a lot of good quarterbacks.
Okay.
And no elite guy. Like there's no CJ Stroud. There's no Bryce Young. There's no Mac Jones, kind of guy, but there's a lot of good ones. They kind of eat each other up, and then some non-quarterback just dominates all those people who don't want to vote for any of those other quarterbacks.
Right.
And so I could see something like that happening where maybe the guy wins it because maybe he only gets first or second, like barely wins the first place votes, or maybe finishes like second and first place votes, but gets a ton of second place votes and third place votes because there's so many quarterbacks taking first, second, and third votes away from each other. So, that's kind of what I thought about. I mean, people say like Ollie Gordon from Oklahoma State. I don't know that he will be that guy. I think it's probably someone that's going to come from maybe a little bit of a bigger program.
Okay.
Than Oklahoma State. I mean, Ollie Gordon last year rushed for 1,732 yards and had 21 touchdowns. And I mean, didn't even sniff the top 5 of Heisman Trophy voting. Let me go see where he was last year. I mean, he wasn't anywhere close to the top 5. I don't believe he finished 7th. So, I mean, Marvin Harrison Jr. finished ahead of him. So it's going to be something like that. It'll be somebody that for one of the top 10, because the rule is it's going to be a quarterback or a running back or a receiver on one of the top 5 to 6 teams in the country. So it's going to be, it could even be like a lot of people are thinking like, oh, Will Howard's the top. I mean, I could see something where like Travion Henderson goes for like 1,800 yards and 20 touchdowns this year. Ohio State's the number 1 seed. And because like I have Notre Dame beating Ohio State in the Heisman's been handed out by then.
Right.
Like I could see it being like a Travion Henderson, some has just gets back to what he was as a freshman, rushes for, because if Travion Henderson puts up Ollie Gordon's numbers, he's a Heisman finalist contender. You know what I mean? Like,
sure,
it could be somebody like that. It could be, let's say a receiver breaks out for, I'm like Emeka Egbuka, somebody like that. It could be somebody, Justice Haynes has a monster breakout, 1,700-yard Alabama, something like that. I don't know that Georgia is going to have that, but because I think Georgia is going to be kind of like what Notre Dame's going to deal with, is their ball is going to get spread around a lot at Georgia. So I don't know if they'll have like that breakout guy, but I could see Oregon having, a running back that goes crazy, a receiver that goes crazy. I could see Ohio State, one of the backs at Ohio State having a monster season.
Sure.
Somebody mentioned Isaiah Bond at Texas. I don't know that he'd be my pick for that, but somebody like that, I think is kind of where I'm at, Vince.
Okay.
In my thought process of who Nicholas Singleton has a monster 1,800-yard season for a really good Penn State team that's in the playoff, a top 10 team, knocks off one of the two big ones. I could see something like that. It'll be somebody like that or some comparable receiver, as far as breaking out and having that kind of season. So,
gotcha. I like it.
So you'll see Riley Leonard clap, shake the guy's hand,
right?
And yeah, that's my pick. When was the last time? I'm trying to think. When was the last time a running back won the Heisman Trophy? Wasn't it? It was I think it was Derrick Henry in 2016, wasn't it?
Sounds right. Yeah.
Let me go back or 15, excuse me. He won it in 15. Let's see here, because you had quarterback, receiver in 20, quarterback. Yeah, Derrick Henry. And then before that, quarterback, Mark Ingram in 2009. And then Devontae Smith won it in 2020. And prior to that, the last receiver to win the Heisman Trophy was, I love that Wikipedia lists Eric Crouch as a quarterback / receiver. That guy never played a snap of receiver in his college life.
He went to the NFL and they tried to put him at wide receiver,
which
but
is
never
fine.
in college.
Desmond Howard back in 91 is the last full-time receiver that won a Heisman prior to Devontae Smith. So doesn't happen often. So that's why I kind of felt good about it being a bold prediction.
That's a bold one.
Yeah.
That's definitely a bold one for sure.
That's where I'm at. So
love it. Well, that's going to do it for our bold prediction show, folks. Thanks for hanging out with us on a Sunday night. Again, we're just getting you primed up for what Sunday nights are going to be throughout the college football season, because we're going to be here with you doing our upon further review. And then, of course, as I say that, I'm remembering that next week it's going to be on a Monday because of traveling. So we're going to do Monday at 7 next week upon further review. But in the meantime, of course, we've got the whole week of shows in the afternoon and in the evening with IB Nation Sports Talk. We will have the post-game show probably, 5 to 10 minutes after the conclusion of the Texas A&M game. And the lineup will shift from week to week. But the one thing that will remain constant is yours truly. I will be on the post-game show as much as humanly possible. And looking forward to breaking down a bunch of Notre Dame wins this year and all kinds of fun. And so our schedule starting tomorrow is going to be our normal weekly slate of shows in the afternoon. For the most part, our normal.
I'm going to do a show tomorrow.
Okay,
but gotcha. We're not going to always have a Monday show, so I'll talk more about that tomorrow.
Perfect. And then we have the normal slate of Monday through Thursday, IB Nation Sports Talk. And then Friday night, we will release our pregame show, which will be myself, Sean, and Jesse. And that will be available via YouTube and podcast on Friday evenings. And so that if it's an early game, you can, listen to it on Friday. You'll have any time in the morning on Saturday or into the afternoon to watch it. Listen to it.
Show will be on Thursday for those asking. And we're going to have some fun. It's going to be me. I'm going to have some guests on the show. And little special thing, Bill Bender is going to join me every Thursday.
Nice.
And he and I are going to preview and break down and make predictions for the bigger college football games. So we thought about doing something like that on CFB Nation, but we're just going to have it after the Notre Dame prediction on Thursday. So he and I will look at the big, so we'll talk about Florida, Georgia on Thursday. We'll talk about LSU, USC, games like that. So he and I are going to, every Thursday, he's going to join me and we're going to talk about just the big games of the weekend after.
Nice.
We do the Notre Dame keys to victory and predictions.
Yeah.
So that would be a lot of fun as well. So,
Awesome.
and that'll be a regular Thursday segment. There may be a couple that Bill has to miss here and there, but we'll still have them on the times that he doesn't. I'm very excited.
Life happens, folks, and so we got to be flexible. But we're attempting to be as regulated as possible throughout the football season. But what you can guarantee yourself is that you're always going to get plenty of content from Irish Breakdown, both on the YouTube channel, on the podcast, and then, of course, on the website, irishbreakdown.com, and on the boards.irishbreakdown.com. That's where we're gonna be experimenting with some fun stuff over on the boards too. By the way, we're always gonna have our upon further review, but we might push upon further review to the boards because we want to watch some video and we want to do some different things, and so kind of keep your eyes on that. But if you're not a member, then sorry for your luck.
You're missing out.
I'm just saying. So,
and being a member of the board is why we're not going to have as many Monday shows moving forward,
right?
Because of I'm going to need that time to spend on some of the fun things we're going to be doing for members only. Some of the video breakdowns and stat breakdowns and things like that we'll be doing. So
absolutely. So
it'll be fun.
Hey, boards.irishbreakdown.com. Now's a great time to get involved, guys. And we're not running a special or anything because the prices are low all the time.
Our price is always special.
That's what I'm saying. Like there's
always
no reason to run that kind of stuff because we have the everyday low price. So, I'm sorry, but you're not going to get a better bang for your buck anywhere. So
I agree.
Boards.irishbreakdown.com, folks. Get over there. We're going to have some fun stuff. Hey, look, bottom line, Brian, we're going to have a great time this season.
Yes, sir.
Win, lose, or draw. We're going to have a great time. Come hang out with us. Hopefully more wins than loses and draws. But we're going to have a great time, and I'm really looking forward to it. The talk is almost over. It's almost time for some actual football. So I'm fired up. I'm ready to go, Brian. Thanks for hanging out with me tonight. Thanks to all of you for hanging out with us tonight. We will see you next time on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.